drug awareness program.
Tune in for Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Accept your intelligence.
Coming up, microaggressions.
Oh, like asking someone, where are you really from?
Yeah, that's something folks from marginalized communities experience all the time.
And a lot of people who ask those questions don't even realize what they're doing.
So, is it their fault?
And does that even matter?
Microaggressions, next time on Philosophy Talk.
Listen to Philosophy Talk today at noon on KSJE 90.9 FM, Farmington. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them, whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury. San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Twelve minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Tuesday morning, August 17th, 2021. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Michlin, and thanks for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air here in San Juan County, New Mexico. In Durango, Colorado, you can listen at 103.3 FM, and everywhere else it is KSJE.com, and that includes your smart speaker. Welcome also to our viewers who are watching our visual radio program. It is streaming live this morning to the KSJE Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitter account. So thank you for joining us as well. Coming up this morning, it is my first conversation of the new school year with the superintendent from Aztec Schools. Kevin Summers is here. We'll be talking about the new school year and some of the things that he has planned coming up in the next few moments right here on KSJE this morning. Then later on, of course, it is Tuesday, so our Adopt a Pet Tuesday will be on the air at 8:50 a.m. We'll be showing you some of the pets available for adoption from the Farmington Regional Animal Shelter, including Snickers, the dog on the screen right now. Next hour, Mick Hess will be here roving with the arts. This morning, Mick is featuring music from the great Beethoven. You'll hear that coming up today after the news at 9:06 a.m. And don't forget, of course, in addition to all other forms of social media, you can connect with KSJE on our Instagram page as well. Outside our studios this morning here at San Juan College, it is sunny and 61 degrees at the moment. We are expecting a mostly sunny day, but maybe some increasing clouds this afternoon with a chance of a scattered shower or thunderstorm. Warmer than Monday, it'll be 90 for a high today in Farmington, 64 overnight, but cooler tomorrow with a high of 78 on Wednesday with a chance of showers, 79 on Thursday. Maybe things dry out a bit on Friday with mostly sunny skies and a high of 79, and then back into the mid-80s with sunshine for the weekend. Well, let me turn to my guest who is here with me this morning. Welcome back to the KSJE microphones, the new superintendent of schools for the Aztec School District. Kevin Summers is here. Good morning.
Good morning, Scott. How are you, sir?
I am well. Welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk with you.
Well, it is a tradition that we have done with the superintendents during the school year to have you on monthly to give an update on things that are going on in the district. And so since you're the guy with the job, it's no different. And we welcome you here every month. So.
Well, I appreciate it. That's probably too frequent for you to have me in this studio, but I certainly appreciate it. Well,
we're looking forward to visiting with you and hearing more about your plans for the district, as I mentioned. And of course, here we go with a new school year.
Yes, sir.
And as we were talking before we came on the air this morning, I was reminiscing a little bit about our last conversation when you were here back in May with Mr. Carpenter and talking a little bit about the transition and you being new to the job, and many congratulations all around.
Thank you.
And the hopeful outlook that we all had, I think, in May for the summer and the fall, and things were going to be so much better, and we were going to get back into much more normal conditions, and here we are. And of course, as we've learned in the last 18 months, real life kind of turns out a bit different than we planned.
You're absolutely right. We were very hopeful that this new school year would be something that looked a lot more like quote-unquote normal. But as we've seen over the last about 7 days now, we're on day 7 in Aztec, it really hasn't changed a whole lot for us in terms of the requirements that have been provided to us by the state. But that doesn't mean that we can't operate differently as adults. And so that's kind of our big focus this year is figuring out what are the things that we can do as adults to make sure that all of the people who come into our buildings are inspired, they're safe, and they're fulfilled when they leave. So that's kind of where we're at today.
That's true, and that's something I've seen written a lot of places at Aztec schools, those 3 words that you just shared with us.
Yes, sir.
And so that is kind of your, you told me, and I've already forgotten what you called it. I apologize, but I want to call it a slogan because I did that before.
Call it what you want. Slogan, mantra, mission, vision. We call it a just cause. A cause so just that we, can't help but join in and roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Thank you. I should have written that down because it's a great thing. But inspired, safe, and fulfilled.
Yes, sir.
Are the 3 words that we will probably be hearing a lot.
I hope so,
schools this year.
It's really something that we want our culture to be. It's a very aspirational goal, and we recognize that. But we also know that it's an obtainable goal for us. So it's one of those goals that really, when it comes down to it, is about 3 things. It's about understanding generational differences, not only amongst our staff, but also amongst our students. We have students that are starting to gap 2 different generations, Generation Z and Generation Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
And then also we're talking about competencies and soft skills of students, the things that people, high-functioning adults ought to know but sometimes don't, things like respect and patience and resilience and grit. And then finally kind of talking about how is it that we communicate as adults. There's 5 basic communication theories. Some are preferred over others. Society prioritizes some over others. And then as an industry of education, we have tended to prioritize some over others. And a lot of times those don't necessarily match up. So being very diligent in how we communicate, and one of the reasons I appreciate being on the show.
Right.
It's a great means for us to have those conversations.
Well, we hope so. And even for folks who don't live within the confines of the Aztec School District, to learn and hear what you're planning and what you're doing and what your students are doing, what your teachers are doing.
Yes, sir.
I think is a great service as well to spread the word. And that's why we're happy to
you.
do it. We've got some kind of talking points, if you will, to talk a little bit about some of the things. You had your district-wide convocation just about a week ago.
Yes, sir. Yeah, August 4th, and huge gratitude to San Juan College and Dr. Pendergrass for allowing us use of the Performance Hall at the Henderson Fine Arts Center. What a tremendous opportunity for all of us. We had all of our employees gather, and we don't really have the facilities in Aztec to be able to gather responsibly and be able to social distance.
Right.
But when we were able to use the Henderson Center, it was perfect for us. We could use the balcony and the bottom, and we only used it for about 4 hours. But in that 4 hours, that's when we really started to dig deep of what does it mean to be inspired, safe, and fulfilled, and really setting the tone for the school year. And if I'm going to kind of summarize it for you, it's really let's care about people. Mm-hmm. If we can learn a little bit about math or reading or science or history or any of the other things, that's great. It's all gravy, but let's care about people. That's our focus this year.
Well, and after the year that we've all had, I think that maybe makes a lot of sense, right? And for
Absolutely.
Parents maybe listening to us and watching us this morning, what does that mean for their kids, though? Are they still going to learn about math and
Absolutely.
science and all that important stuff while they're coming to school?
Of course, through the lens of what are the skills that kids have to have in order to be successful, not only in the classroom, but more importantly, quote unquote, in the real world, right? And so while we're learning about fractions, while we're learning about author's purpose, we're also talking about what's it mean to be a responsible human being. Kind of the way that we've been thinking about it is using the United States Marine Corps as an example. So young men and women go to the United States Marine Corps for basic training. It takes them 9 weeks. But when they're done, they're not necessarily full-fledged Marines in their specialty. They're basically trained Marines, and they continue going on to receive advanced training in their military occupational specialty. We kind of view ourselves as the same, in the same sense as an educational organization, wherein when kids walk across our stage as seniors, we want to produce basically trained human beings. They've got the skills, both hard and soft, to be able to function highly in society. And then we're going to send them off to more training, whether that be a trade school, whether that be college, whether that be entering the workforce and getting some on-the-job training. But we want to create some basically trained human beings in nearly all aspects of the word.
Very good. And I guess just like a good Marine, right, if you're faced with something maybe that you didn't learn about in basic training or whatever the training was, you want your students to be able to react to some of those real life things as well.
Absolutely. We, again, inspired, safe, and fulfilled. So when we talk about safety, it's not just physical safety. Physical safety is something that is certainly on the minds of the entire community of Aztec and Albuquerque, unfortunately, with this last week. But physical safety is only a piece of the equation. We need to talk about emotional safety, being comfortable and being vulnerable, being comfortable saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this means. Can you help me? And reaching out to those, well-qualified, caring adults that are within our system for some assistance.
Something new this year for Aztec schools, at least I think it's new, is an app.
Yes, sir.
For the district that you have, maybe not you personally, but your district folks have developed. Maybe you did. I don't know.
No, I would love to take credit for it, but I can't.
Right.
In fact, Mr. Jonathan Akery, he's our Associate Superintendent of Talent Management. He's really kind of ran point on the new website and app development for Aztec Municipal School District. It's a great way to communicate. We really encourage all of our stakeholders, go to the App Store, go to the Google Play Store, download the AMSD app. Really what it is, it's a great means of communication. So all of the social posts we make, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or even on our Facebook, they're live feed on the app. You can push notifications. All of our events are going to be populated in there, so you can actually add those events directly into your cell phone calendar. What an amazing way to communicate, which is, again, one of those focus areas for us, is how do we communicate? And we know historically it's hard to communicate with 3,000 families in a way that everybody's going to get it. And I think that this is diverse enough that it helps us kind of check that box off in terms of our attempts. Well,
one more way, I think, for communicating with your families, with parents who want to know what's going on at school with their students, whatever the case may be. Now, for folks maybe who aren't app savvy or maybe who don't maybe want to put another app on their phone, you're still going to be communicating the old-fashioned way too, aren't you?
Absolutely. So part of our website,
we get our Kevin Summers robocalls.
You're getting a little bit of robocalls still.
Thank
you. We actually have also we also have a text message application that sends text messages out. We've been sending emails, and obviously we use kind of the traditional social media of Facebook, and in certain cases even it's print media. So mailing out letters. We'll have all of the streams of communication. We're just trying to tap into the few streams that we haven't yet.
Gotcha. So this isn't really replacing necessarily other ways to communicate with your parents and teachers and staff and students. It's one more option, I guess, right?
Yes, sir.
Got it. Yep. And again, as you mentioned, it is available for both types of phones, iPhones and Android phones. So just from the appropriate app store, you can go in, and it's free, of course.
It's free to download. It's not completely highly functioning yet. It's something that we actually just moved to about a week ago. Which was kind of a monumental feat in of itself.
Well,
fantastic for us to be able to switch so quickly from website to website and have that app developed. But it's functioning right now. If you click on staff of various sites, you'll see all of those staff lists populated, usually with pictures of the staff too. So it's a great way for community members to get to know who all the staff are in our various buildings.
And you mentioned website, so this means that the website's had a little bit of an overhaul as well for Aztec schools?
Yes, sir. Yes. We migrated from our old website to our new website. There's actually a picture there on the screen. The left-hand side of the screen is our new website. Looks a lot like the app. It's live. It scrolls. The feed updates instantaneously as we update all of our social media. And wow, it's just sharp looking now.
Yeah, it does look sharp. There's a lot of orange there and black, so that's important.
That's right.
Good job. And there it is. So again, folks can check it out, and I'm sure you're open to feedback.
Absolutely. In fact, in the coming days, we're going to be putting some feedback methodologies on our website, so people can provide us, suggestions, comments, questions regarding everything, not just our app and website, but everything.
Sure.
so that it's not necessarily lost energy when people say, I wish Aztec would do X, Y, and Z. Now we can gather that and hopefully respond to it.
Very good. My guest this morning, Kevin Summers, is with me. He is the new superintendent of schools, of course, at the Aztec Municipal School District. And I always hear from superintendents sometimes and others at school districts that maybe some of the software that they use to communicate with parents, and if parents don't update their phone numbers in that software, they're not able to reach those parents in case of whatever you need to communicate with those parents. Is that something that
absolutely
that this may help with, or still they need to do that?
No, I think that this is a great way to kind of ease some of that concern. Obviously, the first thing we always ask parents to do is, as you're enrolling your child every year, let's update those phone numbers, let's update those emergency contacts, just in case. But in the absence of doing that, having an application like this on your phone where you're receiving push notifications directly from our organization certainly aids that problem that we are experiencing across the state with people changing phone numbers and things of that sort.
Right. Well, and I always tell everyone, know your sources. And if you're getting information from Facebook, that's great. Not every Facebook page is reliable or
that's
group.
where I get all the best news, Scott.
Well, maybe from my page, but no. But I'm just saying. But I think for folks to know, this notification's coming from the app at Aztec Schools.
Correct.
I know this is a legit, important notification about my kid or my kid's school or whatever the case may be, and it's not somebody who heard something from their neighbor's milkman who posted on Facebook, and that's how old I am, because I'm talking about milkmen. But that's what I'm trying to say.
No, I think you're absolutely right. You know it's a legitimate communication when it comes from our application, and not necessarily Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or somebody else's, Tia's cousin's friend.
Right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I think that's important in this day and age for sure. No
Yes,
kidding. Let's talk a little bit about where we are coming back to school now, a week in. I think, as I mentioned before, we were very optimistic about the fall, and fall is a new normal, and we hear that a lot, and I hate using that term, but here we are. But here we are, and you've got some mask rules, but I think the goal, at least if I remember correctly, from last year was get the kids back face-to-face in the classrooms. That seems to be the best place for kids to learn and not be virtual. A lot of kids had problems with that. Some didn't, but a lot of kids did. And so I thought the goal through this last year was getting the kids back in face-to-face in the classrooms. Now they are, but now, of course, because things aren't ever like we think they're going to be, there has to wear masks in many cases. And so this is where we are.
This is where we are,
right.
which is somewhat unfortunate as a district, and not because I'm for masks or against masks, but we know that we have camps within our community that represent one side or the other side of this argument, and so what that does for us as an organization is it guarantees that we can't please everybody. In fact, it probably guarantees that we're going to make somebody mad, and our hope is to equally distribute that anger.
Right.
But you're right. The ultimate goal is to have students face to face. We know that that's the gold standard of education, has been forever, and I think will continue to be for the foreseeable future. We do know that there's some students who are certainly successful at a virtual platform, and as a result of that, we've created a virtual platform that is by application only, essentially, for those students that we know they really did great with it last year, and we want to provide them that opportunity. But our goal is to have people face-to-face, both adults and students. We know that from a psychological perspective, there's more efficacy there. From a learning perspective, there's more efficacy there. And that's what we've done. So while we do have some mask mandates placed upon us by the State Department of Education, ultimately the goal has been achieved in having in-person instruction.
And let's talk about those for just a moment. So again, the Public Education Department came out and said, this is how we're going to do this, to get kids back into the classroom face-to-face, because that's what everybody wants to see happen. But in order to do it safely, unfortunately, because we're still dealing with COVID, this is what we think we need to do. And that's from the Public Education Department.
Yeah. So and with the surge of the Delta variant, we have seen it filter into our schools a little bit. We've had a few small instances of positive cases both students and adults that have been mitigated very, very well as a result of these COVID-safe practices. But for essentially for elementary schools, those would be our schools that are pre-K through 5th grade. Everybody needs to wear a mask, and that's right in line with guidance from the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics.
And these students are too young to even get a vaccine
Exactly.
at the moment, and
Correct.
so this is where we are.
Exactly. So anybody who's under 12, whether they're an adult or not, or whether they've been vaccinated or not as an adult, we just want everyone to wear masks as a result of the PEDS mandate, so that we're in compliance with it, but also we're mitigating that potential transmission vector.
Right.
For secondary schools, these are the students who actually have the ability to become vaccinated, should they so choose, as well as our adults. And so at grade level 6 through 12, should somebody want to not wear a mask, all they have to do is choose to provide us some sort of evidence of vaccination, and we'll issue them some documentation, and if they have that documentation with them, they don't have to wear a mask while indoors or on district transportation. And I really think that there's a great compromise this year that we didn't see last year, which is when outside, regardless of grade level, regardless of vaccination status, when outside or actively eating and drinking, nobody needs to wear a mask necessarily. It's very hard to eat a cheeseburger through a mask.
No kidding.
And it's very hard to breathe when you're sprinting on the playground with your friends. So I think that there's this nice break that's kind of built in through the day of anytime you're outside, that mask comes off. And as a result of that, we've encouraged our teachers at all grade levels, hey, weather's beautiful right now. Let's get our students outside. We can do some outdoor learning and really kind of maximize that comfort for some of our students who may have trouble breathing in a mask.
Right. And we've heard that, and that's,
Yes, sir.
for some kids, is a legitimate concern the parents would have, and so having these breaks maybe throughout the day gives them a little bit of a break from having to wear that mask
Absolutely.
all the time.
Yes, sir.
And you have this mask pass, which is what you're talking about. So if folks do want to provide, I guess, proof of vaccinations, they would be given this mask pass.
Correct. Yeah, I
documentation.
do need to reiterate, Scott, that it's completely optional.
Right.
Nobody has to provide us evidence of vaccination, but if I'm a secondary student or a secondary teacher for that matter, and I want to not wear that mask, I do need to provide some sort of evidence of documentation, or vaccination, excuse me, whether that's my vaccine card, whether that's a printout from the Department of Health. Once we have that, we will verify it. We issue a mask pass that that person keeps on their person at all times.
Right.
So, they could clip it to their lanyard if they wanted. They could put it in their pocket, put it in their backpack. And really what it is just verification. If they're walking through the hallway without a mask and a teacher stops and says, Scott, I noticed you're not wearing a mask, you can produce your mask pass real quick. Teacher says, thank you very much, and you can put it away and go about your day. Conversely, if you don't have that mask pass with you and you're not wearing a mask, we would probably issue you a disposable mask and say, hey, sorry, Scott, I understand you have a mask pass, but you don't have it with you today, so we're going to need you to mask up so that we can be in compliance with the rules that have been mandated to us.
Right. And I guess you're suggesting, Mr. Summers, that students might forget something when they arrive at school some days that happens?
Yeah.
Does that still happen?
Students are kind of like Etch-a-Sketches. We spend all day as parents and as teachers crafting this beautiful picture on the Etch-a-Sketch, and then they go to sleep and somebody shakes them, and we kind of have to start over. So sometimes they forget a few things.
But you've got a plan for that.
Yes,
and
sir.
that's important for folks to know. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, since we just got through talking about this, and folks may be feeling a little, as you mentioned, folks have various emotional responses and maybe well-reasoned responses for guidelines like this. And so Aztec Schools just last night, I think, the school board decided to join a lawsuit in New Mexico. Tell us about that, if you could.
So it's the Board of Education, Gallup, McKinley County Schools et al. I think there's a total of 18 plaintiff districts against the New Mexico Public Education Department, and it's specifically regarding local control. And so the crux of the case is essentially this: there are currently two statutes in the state of New Mexico. One statute, I believe it was 2004, that provided the Public Education Department authority over schools. But then there's another statute that provides locally elected school boards local control over schools. And so both of those statutes being in existence at the same time it seems to be a little bit of a conundrum, right? You can't have both of those statutes at the same time. One person has to have power over the other. And so the Board of Education for Aztec Municipal School District last night voted to join in that lawsuit with the other 17 plaintiff districts. We do see it going, probably several years in the works, but it's something that's encouraging and making sure that our local school district can make the decisions that are necessary for Aztec. In fact, one of our board members noted last night that the decisions that are good for Aztec might not necessarily be the same decisions that are good for Albuquerque Public Schools, and I think that goes for all 89 districts. We're very unique in this state, and even in this Four Corners area, the difference between Farmington and Aztec and Bloomfield and Central is pretty immense. And so having school boards be in control of making those decisions locally is something that the board is interested in.
Got you. And this came to fruition, I guess, from some of these mandates that have come down from the state. Is that kind of how Gallup got involved with this? I mean,
I think Gallup originally started based on some other dealings with the state, but we've seen that plaintiff list grow as a result of these mandates from the state.
I see.
And we've certainly seen in other parts of the state school boards trying to pass some action and essentially kind of getting their hands swatted and a little bit more. Some
school board members are out of a job in some districts, so
yes,
I
sir.
understand. And so you've joined, the Aztec district has joined this lawsuit, and as you say, this probably, like lawsuits go, could take years to resolve. But I think what everyone is maybe looking for, at least the plaintiffs, are some decision as to what should be the rule and the rule of law in New Mexico as far as control. And I guess part of me says, but don't we want state standards, and don't we want all kids to learn a certain standards of education? And if you leave it up to local schools, could that just be a hodgepodge of educational standards if you do have that local control?
Potentially. I think when you look at statute, there's about 8 different responsibilities of the board, one of which is local policy, finance, hire and fire the superintendent. Those are kind of the big 3. But when we talk about policy, that's essentially where school boards are residing right now, is what are the policies that we're going to make as a result of the pandemic, or as a result of these new standards that the state has provided to us. So I think that there's a potential for your scenario, but by and large, I think the Public Education Department and the state legislature have always been very clear that when we talk about standards, educational and academic standards, those typically come from the state level, and then it's local school boards' responsibility to create policies that enact those particular standards and how they operate within those particular standards. Therein kind of lies the rub. I also think it's important to kind of note, as a result of the Aztec Municipal School Board of Education, joining this lawsuit, it's imperative of us as the licensed executors of those particular mandates and policies for us to be good stewards, right? So they've joined in this lawsuit for local control, and we now have the onus to say we're responsible enough that we can have local control. So we have to abide by all of the mandates and policies and procedures that have been administered to us in order to be those good stewards.
Putting your money where your mouth is.
Exactly.
Okay. Very good. You mentioned earlier an option for some students who perform very well virtually, and that is something that I wanted to kind of touch on again too, as we have a few minutes remaining. But this is the Aztec Academy. Is
Aztec,
that right?
TECH.
Not
yes.
lost on me. I like that. But that's what we're talking about, correct?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And so by application only.
By application only. We actually we capped it at 85 students. We didn't know exactly the kind of demand that we would have, and whether or not we actually had 85 well-qualified students. Those students who had the capacity and the resilience last year to be very successful in this setting. And we hit that cap very, very quickly. So currently we have a waiting list, and that waiting list I think is about 10 or 12 right now. But once that waiting list hits 40, that is cause for us to begin a new cohort and start to hire some new people in order to make that work. So for any parents in the Aztec School District that are interested in having a virtual only option, provided that your student is well qualified, you can certainly apply for it. That's on our website at aztecschools.com, and then at the top you'll see Aztec Academy. There's an application process there, and our principal, who actually is one of our assistant principals at the high school, Sharda Sanders, she's in charge of that particular program. So she does all the vetting and has conversations with families as to what to expect, what are the requirements of families, and what are the responsibilities of Aztec schools.
Very good. And this is for K through 12.
K through 12, yes, sir.
And so interesting. And again, I guess for the application, you just want to make sure these students are performing well or will perform well in this new environment, that they don't get there and then say, oh, well, I'm not doing very well, I want to go back to face-to-face.
Exactly. We don't want to set anyone up for failure. So there's checks built in, both academic checks and also social emotional checks, making sure that people have the resources and supports available to them to be successful, making sure that, you know, we have a family member, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, a brother or sister, somebody who's there to be essentially the learning coach for that particular kiddo. While there is live instruction available in this virtual option, it's not necessarily one-to-one and hand over hand. We're not in the homes with these particular individuals, so we need to make sure that those supports exist and the infrastructure exists. Do you have a computer? We'll provide you a computer. Do you have internet? Do you have the availability to sit down in a quiet space and be able to, you know, listen to the teacher or perform those tasks so that you can exhibit mastery? All of those things have to be considered.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Well, Mr. Summers, we are out of time for our visit today, but I certainly appreciate you coming in and sharing some of this information with us. I guess just a final thought, you know, if you had any words of advice for students or parents who hear us talking and they're like, oh my gosh, we're going through this, here we go again, kind of a thing. But my hope is that this is temporary, that some of these masking requirements and other things are temporary, and as we see more folks maybe becoming vaccinated and get a better handle on this variant, that perhaps some of these things may go away as the school year progresses.
Yeah, you know, I too hope that it's temporary. I do have the suspicion that it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better in terms of what those masking mandates may be in the coming weeks. But that being said, we're a resilient people. We have been since the dawn of time. Our country is founded upon people who were willing to go the extra mile, and we were talking earlier about generational differences, and so we oftentimes talk about the matures or the builders as being the greatest generation. And they weren't the greatest generation because they're better than everyone else. They were the greatest generation because they were willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that the next generation was set up for success. And I think that that's a viewpoint that we can take right now, is we have the opportunity to do the things, whether they're convenient or not, whether we like them or not, to do the things that make sure that the next generation, Generation Alpha, and subsequent generations are set up for success.
Well, we'll look forward to continuing the conversation. Mr. Summers, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. We'll see you again in about a month.
Yes, sir.
That is Kevin Summers, Superintendent of Aztec Schools, my guest this morning here on KSJE. And back with more in just a moment, everyone. The time is 8:42.
A window into the chaos and suffering in Afghanistan through uploads from the ground. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace Tech. I'm Megan McCarthy.